So, back in July 2026, Anne Hathaway went on national television and she did something that Hollywood A-listers honestly almost never ever do.
Right, the Andy Cohen interview. I remember that.
Yeah, exactly. She's sitting there with Andy Cohen, the cameras are rolling, all the fans are watching, and she gets asked directly for an update on like one of the most highly anticipated sequels of the decade.
Which is usually the exact moment the PR media training just entirely takes over, right? Like you smile, you nod, you give some completely empty platitude.
Oh, 100%. You say something totally vague, like, we're cooking up something really special, or, oh, the script is just coming along great. But instead, she looked right into the camera and just publicly admitted that they were entirely scrapping the script.
Yeah, it was wild.
She actually said out loud that they had to start over with a completely new direction. And she explicitly acknowledged that, this was not the update anybody actually wanted to hear.
It was honestly a jaw-dropping moment for anyone who really understands how studio PR machines operate.
Mhm.
Because you just do not broadcast internal development chaos on live television unless there is a very specific, like highly calculated reason for doing so.
Exactly. And, well, that is exactly what we're getting to the bottom of today. You've probably been seeing the internet just completely melt down over the news of a return to Genovia.
Oh,
Right. But what you aren't seeing is the absolute chaos going on behind closed studio doors to actually make it happen. So, welcome to today's Greenlight Report broadcast. We are so glad you're here with us because we have gathered a massive stack of sources to untangle a web that has been, honestly, 24 years in the making.
it's been a long time.
It really has. We're talking about the long-awaited, highly anticipated, and surprisingly tumultuous journey of Princess Diaries 3.
And the development landscape for this project is, well, it is the absolute definition of muddy waters. I mean, it paints a picture of a massive legacy studio, Disney, and a megastar producer who both desperately want to make this movie, but they're navigating an absolute minefield of creative and logistical challenges.
So our mission for today's Greenlight Report broadcast is to decode this recent script breakthrough that Hathaway mentioned, right? We're going to analyze the drastically shifting directorial vision behind the scenes and figure out exactly who is actually packing their bags for a return to Genovia.
Yeah, and we've got some great data on this.
We really do. We're pulling from entertainment trade publications like The Hollywood Reporter and Deadline, deep strategic production analyses, fan reactions from Reddit, and even direct quotes from original author Meg Cabot and the cast members themselves.
It's a lot to dig through.
It is. But before we look at where this new movie is going, I feel like we really have to understand the massive financial and cultural weight of where it started. Because, Disney doesn't just hold on to a property for 2 decades for purely sentimental reasons.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean,
Yeah.
if you want to understand literally any studio decision, you always start by following the money.
Right. Always.
Always. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to remember the landscape of early 2000s Disney. The original 2001 film, The Princess Diaries, was an absolute cultural phenomenon. I mean, it grossed $165 million worldwide.
Which, back in 2001, for a live-action family comedy, was just a staggering amount of money.
Unbelievable numbers.
And the sequel, Princess Diaries 2, Royal Engagement, which came out in 2004, it really wasn't far behind at all. That one brought in about $134 million globally.
Right. But what is really crucial to understand here, and this is what studio executives look at when they're digging through their IP vaults, is the return on investment.
Okay, right. The budget versus box office.
Exactly. These were massive, massive hits that generated roughly $300 million combined at the global box office. But they were made on relatively modest budgets. Like the original only cost about $26 million to make.
Wow. Just 26.
Just 26. And the sequel was around $40 million. So that is the kind of mathematical ratio that a studio just never forgets. It established a highly profitable foundation. And that's just the theatrical run. Think about the ancillary revenue.
Right. Like the DVDs?
DVD sales in the 2000s were huge, plus cable syndication rights.
Yeah.
And now the fact that it continues to perform incredibly well as this legacy anchor on Disney+.
Yeah, it's just like an atmospheric constant at this point. If you have Disney Plus, you have probably scrolled past Mia Thermopolis in her sunglasses and tiara 100 times.
For sure.
But, talk of a third film isn't exactly new. This has been floating around in the ether for years. According to the trades, back in 2016, the original director, the legendary Garry Marshall, he was actively teasing a third film. He even spoke to People magazine about it.
He did, yeah. He said he had been with Anne Hathaway just weeks prior, and they were discussing a project that would actually take place in New York City.
Oh, wow. New York.
Yeah, Garry Marshall had this incredible touch for grounding these high-concept fairy tales in very physical, relatable locations. So moving Mia from Genovia to Manhattan was the working concept at the time.
But then reality hit, right? Because production got delayed since Hathaway was pregnant with her first child. And then, tragically, Garry Marshall passed away shortly after that in 2016.
Which was just a huge loss.
A massive loss. And when you think about it, it fundamentally changed the entire DNA of what this third movie could even be. Because Garry Marshall wasn't just a director for those movies, he was the tone.
Yeah, he was totally the captain of the ship. Losing him meant losing the specific comedic rhythm that really defined the first two films. And, this brings us to the fascinating and highly risky challenge of the legacy sequel.
Right, because we see studios reviving properties that are 20, sometimes 30 years old all the time now. Top Gun, Maverick, Indiana Jones, Ghostbusters, Afterlife.
Exactly. But reviving a property after 2 decades carries a massive risk profile. Like, Disney knows they have a built-in audience, this deeply nostalgic millennial fan base. But if you get it wrong, you don't just flop at the box office.
It's worse than that.
It's so much worse. You risk actively alienating the very people who subscribe to your streaming service to watch the originals on repeat. You risk damaging the permanent catalog value of the original films.
Okay, but I have to jump in here and question this whole Hollywood strategy, though, because, is making a movie 20 years later really this guaranteed win that studios think it is?
Well, it depends on how you look at it.
Right, but, if we look at nostalgia, is returning to Genovia like unearthing a vintage wine that's been aging perfectly in the cellar, gaining all this complexity over time? Or are we just opening a Tupperware container that's been sitting in the back of the fridge for 20 years and we're just blindly hoping it hasn't sprouted legs and gone toxic?
Great analogy.
At what point does nostalgia just, expire?
That is the exact debate happening in studio boardrooms right now. Yeah. It's not just a guessing game for them. It's a highly calculated science. Studio risk assessors spend all day calculating what they call nostalgia windows.
Nostalgia windows, so there's an actual expiration date on when you can bring a movie back.
It's more like a cyclical orbit, actually. Generally, nostalgia cycles operate on a strict 20 to 30-year loop. The kids who watched the original Princess Diaries in theaters back in 2001 were likely, between the ages of 7 and 14. Today, those exact same kids are in their late 20s, 30s, and early 40s. They have completely aged into a new demographic bracket. They have disposable income, which studios obviously love.
Actually.
But more importantly, they are now introducing these foundational childhood movies to their own children.
Wow. Okay, yeah, that makes complete sense. Because Adele Lim, the director who was just hired for this new film, she even mentioned that specifically in her vision statement. She noted that all the fans of the original movie, herself included, are now mothers.
Exactly. So to use your analogy, the Tupperware hasn't gone bad. It's just been waiting for an entirely new generation of diners to sit down at the table and share the meal.
That's a nice way to look at it.
Yeah, it is the prime window. The millennial mother shares it with her Gen Z or Gen Alpha daughter, and suddenly you have a 4-quadrant family hit. But the fear of opening that container and finding something unappetizing is incredibly real. And that fear perfectly explains the behind-the-scenes chaos we've seen with the script.
Right. Because the transition from wanting to do the movie to actually writing a workable blueprint has been this endless revolving door of discarded drafts. Like, when you look at the strategic production analysis we pulled from the trades, you can actually break down the script development into 3 distinct, agonizing phases.
And it is a roller coaster.
It really is. Okay, so phase 1 kicks off around November 2022. The trades announced that a writer named Adrita Mukherjee, who worked on Reacher and Supergirl, was brought in to write the script. And the key detail here was that she was crafting a direct sequel, a continuation, not a reboot.
Which is an incredibly important distinction for the fans. I mean, a reboot means recasting Mia Thermopolis. A continuation means honoring the legacy timeline. It signals that Disney knew they couldn't just swap in a new actress and slap the Princess Diaries title on it.
But then, that script apparently just vanishes into the ether. Because we fast forward to phase 2, around October 2024, the trades are suddenly reporting on a completely different screenwriter, Flora Greason.
And she had a totally different approach.
Yeah, she was supposedly crafting this modernized comedic narrative. And this draft actually gained some real traction. It served as the basis for initial pre-production. They started having casting discussions based on it, and it really seemed like this was the movie they were going to make.
But neither of those stuck
Yeah,
because the development process hit a massive wall.
a huge wall. Because now we're in phase 3 as of July 2026, which is an active page 1 rewrite by a collaborative development team.
And we should probably clarify what that means because it sounds like industry jargon, but it represents a brutal reality for a production.
Yeah, explain that. What is a page 1 rewrite?
Well, a page one rewrite is exactly what it sounds like. You don't just tweak the dialogue. You don't just fix a clunky third act. You take the script, you essentially throw it in the actual trash, you open a blank document on your computer, and you start again on page one.
Ouch. That's gotta hurt.
It means the foundational premise of what they were working on, the very core of the story, just wasn't holding up under scrutiny.
And that brings us right back to that Anne Hathaway interview on Andy Cohen. She was the one who revealed they had to start over with this new direction. But honestly, I have to ask, why would she say that?
What do you mean?
Well, you said earlier that stars are media trained to offer PR platitudes. By openly admitting the script was scrapped, isn't she just inviting bad press? Isn't she basically telling investors, hey, we don't know what we're doing?
It might seem that way on the surface, sure. But it's actually an incredibly savvy, multifaceted PR strategy. By being transparent, Hathaway is doing two very specific things. First, she's managing the timeline expectations.
Oh, because fans were probably getting impatient.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If a movie was actively casting in 2024, fans expect a trailer in 2025. By saying, we are starting over from page one, she is throwing cold water on the hype train so fans aren't demanding a release date tomorrow.
That makes sense.
But second, and far more importantly, she's signaling an astronomically high level of quality control.
Right. She's essentially saying, we refuse to greenlight a script we didn't actively believe in.
Precisely. She is protecting the legacy of the franchise by weaponizing her own honesty. In the modern Hollywood ecosystem, fans are incredibly cynical about cash grab sequel. They assume studios are just churning out garbage for a quick buck.
Which they often are, let's be real.
Right. So by Hathaway coming out and saying the script wasn't good enough so we killed it to protect the characters, she builds immense trust with the audience.
And she did try to frame it positively, to be fair. She called it a story breakthrough, noting that the team finally feels they are moving in the right direction now. Like, she said they all feel really good that this collaborative rewrite is going to be the one.
Yes, she was very optimistic about the new direction.
But we also have to factor in the sheer logistics of Anne Hathaway's life right now, because in that same July 2026 interview, she showed off her baby bump, announcing her third pregnancy, which, immediately replaces any firm sense of when she could physically endure a grueling film shoot.
Yeah, production schedules are fragile ecosystems at the best of times. If your lead actress is pregnant, you don't just delay a few months. You often have to delay an entire year to hit the right weather windows for location shooting, to re-coordinate the schedules of your supporting cast, and to secure soundstage availability.
Plus, she's got an insanely packed schedule right now anyway. I mean, she's currently filming The Devil Wears Prada 2, which unexpectedly got fast-tracked and took precedence over Genovia, which really speaks to her power in the industry right now, I think.
Cloud Hathaway wheels in 2026 is immense. Think about her career trajectory. She spent the last year fronting a massive cinematic comeback that grossed $666 million worldwide on a $100 million budget.
She is just crushing it right now.
She is a certified, bankable, global box office draw. She can afford to hit pause. She doesn't have to rush out a subpar Princess Diaries just to stay relevant or collect a paycheck. She has the leverage to look at a Disney executive and say, no, we aren't shooting this until the script is perfect.
Okay, but I have to point out a massive, glaring irony here in our sources, because we have Meg Cabot, the author of the original books, going on record in April of that same year. And she says she read a draft, there's a great script with a part for everyone, and it's basically ready to go.
Yeah. That was a very confusing week for fans.
Right? And then literally 3 months later, Anne Hathaway goes on TV and says, yeah, we scrapped it. We're starting over. Well, what is going on there? Who is actually calling the shots? Like, is the studio chasing some new demographic trend? Or is Hathaway just fiercely protecting her character from a bad plot line? How do you have the creator of the universe saying it's perfect and the star saying it belongs in the trash?
Well, this is a classic, fascinating Hollywood tug-of-war. You really have to separate the creator of the intellectual property from the custodians of the film franchise. Meg Cabot wrote the books, yes, but she has stated multiple times over the years that she views the films and the books as two entirely different parallel universes.
Oh, like they aren't even the same timeline?
Right. For example, in the books, Mia's father is still alive.
Wait, really?
Yes, but in the movies, his death is the catalyst for the entire plot. It's why she inherits the throne in the first place.
Right, okay, so the movie universe is really its own distinct entity.
Exactly. So Cabot's enthusiasm in April was likely completely genuine. She probably read Flora Greason's Phase 2 draft and absolutely loved it. Why? Because it probably included all the classic characters, it hit all the nostalgic beats, and it felt like a warm hug.
Which sounds nice on paper, sure.
But an author's view of what makes a good script is fundamentally different from a lead actor's view or a studio executive's view of what makes a $100 million movie viable in a modern theatrical landscape.
So Cabot is looking for a fun reunion, but Hathaway is looking for a narrative arc that justifies a massive budget.
Precisely. The studio ultimately holds the purse strings, but Hathaway holds all the leverage. Without Mia Thermopolis, there is no Princess Diaries. Disney literally cannot make the movie without her.
No one is showing up for a Mia-less Genovia.
Right, so if Hathaway looks at a script that Meg Cabot loves and says this is too fluffy, it doesn't reflect the mature reality of where this character should be, the studio will scrap it and start over? Hathaway's vision ultimately overrides the author's affection for a draft.
So what does this all mean for the actual story? To execute a story breakthrough, especially one that requires throwing everything in the trash and doing a page-one rewrite, you need a visionary director to steer the ship. You need someone who can synthesize Hathaway's mature vision with Disney's need for a massive commercial hit. And that brings us to the hiring of Adele Lim.
Enter Adele Lim. Her hiring was officially confirmed in October 2024, and it is honestly the strongest signal yet of a massive thematic shift for this franchise.
I was looking at her resume, and it is seriously impressive, but also wildly diverse. Like, she co-wrote Crazy Rich Asians, which was a massive cultural hit. She co-wrote Disney's animated fantasy Raya and the Last Dragon. And then she recently made her directorial debut with Joyride, which is a hard R-rated, raunchy road trip comedy.
It's definitely an eclectic mix on paper.
Wait, I have to stop you there. So you're telling me the person they hired to make the ultimate G-rated, wholesome Disney princess sequel just finished directing an R-rated, raunchy comedy?
Yeah, she did.
How do Disney executives sign off on that? I mean, on the surface, Joyride feels a million miles away from Genovia.
It does on the surface, I completely agree. But studio executives don't look at the MPAA rating. They look at the underlying narrative mechanics. They look at what a director actively knows how to execute. And if you break down those three specific credits, you can see exactly why Disney and Hathaway trusted her to salvage this script. Lim's background makes her the absolute perfect fit for a modernized, complex Genovia.
Okay, break that down for me. How do those three very different movies translate to Mia Thermopolis?
Let's look at them one by one. First, from Crazy Rich Asians. Lim proves she knows exactly how to handle stories about extreme, unimaginable opulence, high society, and crushing cross-cultural expectations. She knows how to make immense wealth look incredibly cinematic while grounding it in highly relatable, emotional family drama. That is basically Genovia in a nutshell.
Right, it's the conflict between Mia's normal, like, American sensibilities and the crushing weight of royal tradition.
Exactly. Second, from Raya and the Last Dragon, she intimately understands the internal machinery of Disney. She knows how to navigate their corporate structure, which is a skill in itself. But narratively, she proves she knows how to write a story about a young woman burdened by the heavy geopolitical responsibilities of leadership and saving her people. She understands the mythic monarch archetype perfectly.
Okay, I see that. And the third piece, the R-rated comedy.
From Joyride, she has proven she can direct sharp, unapologetic, female-led, character-driven comedy. She knows how to pace a joke between women who are navigating complete chaos together. So when you combine the ability to shoot extreme opulence, the understanding of the deep burden of leadership, and the comedic timing of sharp female friendships, what do you get?
You got Queen Mia of Genovia. Okay, that actually makes perfect sense. It's like she's been training for this specific movie her entire career.
She really has. And Lim released a vision statement when she was announced as director that I think is, honestly, the Rosetta Stone for this whole movie. She said that while there are many wish fulfillment movies for princesses, there are almost none for queens.
Right, I actually have the quote here. She said, "The girls who grew up believing in princesses, we want to grow up believing that there is a world in which you can be a queen and be fabulous and kicking ass, and also find a way to mentor the young women coming up after us." She explicitly stated she wants to celebrate core tenets of female power, joy, and mentorship.
And this represents the fundamental transition of the franchise. It is no longer a coming-of-age teen story about an awkward girl trying to fit in at school. It is an adult story about leadership, sovereignty, and female power dynamics on a global stage.
It sounds like Mia is graduating from the entry-level intern phase of royalty. You know, in the first two movies, making a mistake meant like accidentally hitting a baseball through a window or tripping over a dress at a state dinner or eating too much brain freeze ice cream.
Right, very low stakes.
Exactly. It was embarrassing, sure, but the stakes were incredibly low. She was just the intern figuring out where the coffee machine is. Now she's the CEO. If a queen makes a mistake, she could actually impact the GDP of a whole country or cause an international diplomatic incident. Which really makes me wonder, can a movie that started as a goofy teen comedy successfully pivot into a story about geopolitical female leadership without losing its quirky humor?
That is the exact tightrope Adele Lim has to walk, and it is almost certainly why the script required a page-one breakthrough. Writing a clumsy, insecure teenager is an easy comedic trope, right? Audiences inherently forgive teenagers for making messes.
Yeah, because they're kids.
Right. But writing a highly competent mid-30s queen who still retains the relatable, clumsy charm without seeming fundamentally incompetent at her job, that is incredibly difficult storytelling. You can't have a 35-year-old monarch tripping over rugs and hiding in the bushes. The humor has to evolve. It has to come from the pressure of the crown, not just physical clumsiness.
Which brings us to the most vital part of that transition, the people standing around the throne. I mean, you can't have a story about mentorship and leadership without the original Genovian court there to bounce off of. Because Lim's script shifts the focus to mature leadership, the narrative actually requires characters from Mia's past to measure her growth against.
Absolutely.
But gathering this cast together is proving to be a logistical puzzle full of incredibly mixed signals and Hollywood posturing. So let's do the royal roll call. Who is actually packing their bags for Genovia?
Well, the anchor is completely set. Anne Hathaway is officially confirmed to return as Mia Thermopolis, and as we discussed, she is heavily involved as a producer. She is the driving force willing this movie into existence.
But then we have the absolute legend, the icon, Julie Andrews, who played Queen Clarice Rinaldi, and her return is surrounded by heavy, heavy doubts. Honestly, reading through her quotes, it sounds like she has zero interest in coming back.
Yeah, her comments over the years have consistently painted a picture of a woman who feels her time in Genovia has firmly passed. Back in 2020, she told CBS she was getting, quote, awfully old and crotchety, and wasn't sure if it was the right timing, though she did soften it by saying working with Annie again would be lovely.
But then she got a lot more definitive recently, didn't she?
She did.
In April 2024, she told the Today Show that she thought the project had been shelved entirely. And she had this brutal quote, "Sometimes it's best to leave a good thing alone," she added. "I don't like it when people milk the subject, till it's dead. That doesn't sound like a woman eager to put the tiara back on."
No, it really doesn't, and it is a stark contrast to Hathaway's relentless enthusiasm. Hathaway has publicly said she would more than entertain it. She is actively pulling for it. She told Entertainment Tonight in 2022 that if there is any conceivable way to get Julie Andrews involved, they would make it work. Hathaway was so desperate that she even offered to fly a production crew to wherever Andrews was in the world, put a green screen behind her, and just shoot her parts remotely to make it happen.
Which is wild. I mean, it shows how desperate Hathaway is to have her back, but logically, how does that even work? Are we supposed to believe Queen Clarice is just permanently on a Zoom call from a different wing of the palace?
With a funny mental image.
Think about the fan reactions we've seen on Reddit. I was scrolling through the Or Movies thread about Hathaway returning, and fans are demanding the old cast back. But if Julie Andrews doesn't return, does the movie even work? Can Genovia even exist without Queen Clarice's gravitas? She was the perfect foil. Mia was absolute chaos, and Clarice was rigid order.
It's a huge risk for the studio. But if we go back to Adele Lim's comment about Mia becoming the queen and mentoring the next generation, narratively, Mia has to become the new Clarice. Think about the classic hero's journey. At a certain point, the mentor figure has to step away, whether they pass away, retire, or just step back, so the hero can fully claim their power. If Clarice is still hovering over Mia's shoulder, correcting her posture and pulling the strings, Mia hasn't fully taken the throne. She's still just a princess playing dress-up.
Oh, that hurts my nostalgic heart, but it makes perfect narrative sense. Mia has to fly on her own. Okay, what about the internet's favorite royal consort? Let's talk about Chris Pine, who played Nicholas Devereaux, the enemies to lovers love interest in the second film.
Ah, Chris Pine. This is where the mixed signals get almost comical, and it gives us a really great window into how Hollywood negotiations happen in the press.
Okay, tell me more.
We have Meg Cabot, the author, claiming in a TikTok video that Chris Pine is absolutely in the movie. She literally told her fans, Chris Pine obviously is in it. Although he says he's not, but he is.
Right. But Pine himself is playing completely dumb on national television. Like in October 2024, on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon, he claimed the first time he ever even heard about the third movie was when someone sent him a screenshot of an article on the internet.
Which is hard to believe.
Very. And around the same time on The Today Show, when he was directly asked about joining the cast, he basically shrugged and told reporters, call Disney, call Bob Iger. The answer is, I gotta see. I don't know anything about it. How can the author say he's definitely in? He says he doesn't know anything.
To understand this, we have to deeply explore the tension between Cabot's enthusiastic promises and the reality of A-list Hollywood contract negotiations.
Okay.
Meg Cabot is likely looking at a script draft, perhaps Flora Greason's draft from Phase 2, that explicitly includes the character of Nicholas Devereaux. So in her mind, as the creator, he's in the movie. The character is physically on the page. But Chris Pine, the actor, is a massive A-list star.
And A-list stars don't just show up because they're written into a script.
Exactly. Playing coy on national television, explicitly telling people to call the CEO of Disney Bob Iger. That is not ignorance. That is a very public, highly savvy negotiation tactic orchestrated by his representation. You do not go on Jimmy Fallon and say, yes, I am doing the movie, before your agent actually negotiates your back-end box office point.
Okay, explain that to me. What are back-end box office points, and why does that dictate what Chris Pine says on a talk show?
When an actor of Chris Pine's caliber signs on to a guaranteed blockbuster, they don't just get a flat fee up front. Their agents negotiate for a percentage of the film's profits, the back end. And there's a huge difference between net points and first dollar gross.
Right, because of Hollywood accounting?
Yes, studios are notorious for Hollywood accounting, making blockbuster films look like they lost money on paper so they don't have to pay out net points.
Yeah.
So A-listers demand first dollar gross, meaning they get a cut of the box office revenue from the very first ticket sold before the studio deducts any expenses.
So the stakes are millions of dollars.
Tens of millions. By Pine going on TV and acting aloof, he is showing Disney that he doesn't need the movie. He is forcing the fans to demand his return, which gives his agent ultimate leverage. When the fans riot online saying, we need Chris Pine, his agent walks into Disney and says, look, the fans demand him, pay him the first dollar gross. Call Bob Iger directly translates to, call my agent with a bigger number.
That is so brilliantly cynical, and his agent knows the fans will absolutely not accept a movie without him. Reddit user RA commented, and they better be happy and still together. I'm so tired of the cheap gimmick of a happily ever after couple who've broken up between movies. People absolutely hate that trope.
They really do.
You spend a whole movie rooting for them to get together, and then in the sequel, they mention offhand that they got a divorce 3 years ago. It feels like a betrayal.
Because it undermines the emotional payoff of the previous film. It renders the ending of the second movie completely moot. If Adele Lim's core thematic vision is about female joy and empowerment, torpedoing Mia's marriage off-screen purely for cheap dramatic conflict just wouldn't fit the goal. It would just make the audience resentful.
Okay, let's look at some of the supporting cast who aren't playing hard to get, who are practically begging to come back. Sandra Oh, who played Vice Principal Geraldine Gupta in the first movie, enthusiastically wants back in. Now, she skipped the second movie, but she told Entertainment Weekly, I am ready for the Queen. Call me. I'm dying to see how Gupta has moved up in the world.
Bringing back a character like Gupta is exactly what this franchise needs to provide incredible comedic texture. Because Adele Lim is focusing on the geopolitical reality of Genovia, imagine a world where Gupta is no longer a high school vice principal dealing with walkie-talkies in San Francisco, but has somehow maneuvered her way into being the Genovian Secretary of State or the aggressive head of royal public relations.
Yes, she's the one managing the Genovian press corps. That would be amazing.
It perfectly connects the grounded San Francisco roots of the first film with the elevated royal reality of the third. It rewards the audience's nostalgia without just repeating the same high school jokes.
I would honestly watch a whole Disney Plus spinoff of Geraldine Gupta just running the Genovian government behind the scenes. And then there's Mandy Moore, who played Lana Thomas, the ultimate mean girl cheerleader who threw ice cream on Mia. She was on the Drew Barrymore show and said she'd be totally game to return. She suggested Lana needs a redemption narrative, but said the opportunity to just play on-screen besties with Anne Hathaway would be too fantastic to pass up.
And this is where a 20-year gap actually benefits the storytelling rather than hindering it. In high school, Lana was a completely one-dimensional bully. But 20 years later, people change. Lives get complicated. Having Mia's former high school tormentor show up in Genovia, perhaps seeking redemption, or perhaps desperately needing Queen Mia's political or financial help, offers a really rich, nostalgic subplot.
It's brilliant. It's like those high school reunion dynamics where the popular girl peaked in high school and the nerd became a billionaire but played out on a global diplomatic stage. It basically writes itself. But whether or not the entire original cast signs on the dotted line, the franchise is officially expanding its world with new blood, and they are preparing for some massive, massive production logistics.
Yes. Let's deeply break down what we know about this Genovia expansion, because the logistics reveal the studio's true ambitions. It starts with the casting. Adele Lim shared an open casting call on Instagram for a new 15-year-old character named Olivia, who has recently lost her mother.
And for the die-hard book fans out there, that name is a massive flashing clue. Introducing Olivia aligns perfectly with Meg Cabot's Volume XOY book titled Royal Wedding, which introduces Mia's biracial half-sister, Olivia Grace Clarisse Mignonette Harrison, as a new mentee for Queen Mia.
It perfectly serves Adele Lim's stated goal of exploring mentorship. If Mia is the queen, sitting at the top of the hierarchy, she needs someone to guide. She needs someone to project her own lived experience onto. Introducing a Gen Z character allows the film to effectively pass the torch.
Right. Expanding the audience.
Exactly. It brings in a younger audience demographic, the teenagers of today who don't have the nostalgic connection, while allowing Mia to step completely into that authoritative, Clarisse-like mentor role.
It's the classic Lion King circle of life. Mia is basically becoming the new Clarisse to this young girl, Olivia. The clumsy teenager who didn't know which fork to use at a state dinner is now the refined monarch teaching a new clumsy teenager how to navigate the royal court.
Exactly. The narrative comes completely full circle, and the physical scale of this production reflects that maturity. Pre-production has reportedly begun, with the creative team actively scouting historic, practical castles and picturesque towns in the Czech Republic.
Wait, really? The Czech Republic? Because, I mean, the first movie was largely shot on sound stages and locations around Los Angeles and San Francisco. Genovia was just a few wide establishing shots and a Disney backlot. It felt very contained.
Not anymore. The production roadmap outlines pre-production in Q1 2026, with principal photography slated for Q3 2026 in London at the legendary Pinewood Studios. And they are aiming for a holiday 2027 global theatrical and platform debut.
Pinewood Studios in London. That's where they shoot the James Bond movies and the Star Wars franchise. That implies a staggering budget increase.
It tells us everything we need to know about Disney's internal financial projections for this film. Moving from the backlots of California to practical 14th century castle locations in the Czech Republic and utilizing the massive sound stages at Pinewood Studios indicates this is not a cheap, direct-to-streaming cash grab. Disney is treating Princess Diaries 3 as a premium global theatrical tentpole. They are preparing for a massive visual spectacle.
That scale brings its own set of problems, doesn't it? With all these massive European castle shoots. And I read in one of our sources about intense European union wellness protocols and sustainability measures being embedded into the production blueprint. How does that impact the movie? Because when you shoot in Hollywood, they just grind the crew for 16 hours a day.
It radically changes the production schedule and the budget. When you shoot in Europe, especially under modern union regulations, you are dealing with strict labor laws regarding turnaround times, mandatory rest periods, and environmental sustainability protocols for shooting in historic locations.
You can't just run overtime constantly.
You can't just work your crew to the bone. It means the shoot takes longer, which costs exponentially more money. It also means you have to plan your shots with absolute precision. You can't just improvise all day when it's costing you hundreds of thousands of dollars an hour to keep the lights on in a bohemian castle.
So, with all that pressure, all that money, and this massive scale, is there a risk the movie loses its soul? Does it lose the quirky, intimate, clumsy charm of the original San Francisco setting when you suddenly have a $100 million budget and you're shooting epic, sweeping drone shots of European vistas?
That is always the primary danger with sequels that drastically increase in scope. The charm of the original was its intimacy, Mia and her mom living in a converted San Francisco firehouse. The quirky Mustang struggling to turn corners on steep hills, the high school bleachers. But the reality is, you can't go backward. The character is a reigning European monarch now. The environment has to reflect her current reality, which is opulence and power. The challenge for Adele Lim is maintaining the intimate character dynamics, the humor, the heart, the vulnerability between Mia, her friends, and her new mentee, Olivia, against the backdrop of those massive sweeping vistas.
It's like going from playing in a gritty garage band to headlining Wembley Stadium. You just have to hope the lead singer still remembers how to connect with the crowd in the back row.
And that connection hinges entirely on Hathaway's performance and the quality of that page one rewritten script. If they successfully capture Mia's voice, the scale of the production will just be the icing on the cake. If they fail, it will just feel like an empty, expensive travel commercial.
Well, let's briefly recap this incredibly wild journey we've been on today. We've got a massive studio determined to monetize a legacy property, which resulted in years of scrapped scripts and finally a total story breakthrough led by Anne Hathaway. We have Adele Lim bringing a fresh, adult, geopolitically aware vision for a queen stepping up from a princess.
Yeah, huge shift.
It really is. We have the ongoing, slightly maddening casting mystery of whether Chris Pine's coy talk show act will secure his back-end points, and whether Julie Andrews will bless us with one final appearance to hand over the reins. And we have a massive, complex European production looming on the horizon, introducing a new generation to Genovia through the character of Olivia.
It is a monumental undertaking for everyone involved. And it leaves us with a really fascinating final thought to mull over, especially as Disney looks toward that holiday 2027 release. What does a modern monarchy actually look like to a Gen Z audience today?
That's a really good point.
In a world where real-life royals are constantly under intense, highly critical PR scrutiny online, where the very concept of a monarchy is heavily debated by younger generations, how will a lighthearted Disney movie balance the escapist fantasy of wearing a sparkling tiara with the modern realities of actually ruling a country?
That is the $100 million question. Maybe Mia's biggest royal crisis won't be picking a suitor to marry, but dealing with the Genovian economic inflation crisis going viral on TikTok. We will absolutely have to wait and see.
Fingers crossed they pull it off.
Yeah, let's hope so. Before we go, we want to hear from you down in the comments. If you were writing the script, how would you bring Vice Principal Gupta into the royal court of Genovia? What is her official job title in the palace? Let us know.
I'd love to read those.
Same. If you are watching this on YouTube, please hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a video. Plus, it tells the YouTube algorithm that people like our content, which pushes it out to more people. And for our listeners listening on podcast platforms, make sure to follow us so you never miss an episode. Just like on YouTube, it tells the platform's algorithm that people like the show and will push it out to more.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's Greenlight Report broadcast. It seems that old Tupperware container wasn't holding expired leftovers after all. It looks like they're cooking up an entirely new feast. We'll see you next time.